Early one morning, a maidservant ventured out to gather wild berries. Just as she was about to head home with her bountiful harvest,
Come on!
without a moment's hesitation, she grabbed a berry and hurled it at the thief. Struck by the flying fruit, the culprit tumbled off the horse. The woman relentlessly pelted the thief with berries until she got a clear look at his face. Shocked, she immediately dropped to her knees.
Forgive me, Your Highness, I did not see you.
As it turned out, the so-called thief was none other than the prince himself. The prince, however, had no time to dwell on the woman's actions. He tossed her a pouch of gold coins and swiftly rode away. Little did the maidservant know, this unexpected encounter with the prince would change the course of her life. Upon returning home, Anne, the maidservant, chose not to keep the gold for herself. Instead, she decided to use the money to buy the freedom of another maidservant's husband. Meanwhile, the prince found himself ambushed by the royal guard in the woods. He had snuck out of the palace, which explained why he had resorted to stealing a horse. Instead of rushing back to the palace after being caught, the prince took the stolen horse to the manor. The Duchess, having received word of his arrival, came out to greet him.
I'm returning your horse, Baroness. Scared the wits out of one of your servants.
She is mute, my lord.
Really?
With a heavy heart, the prince returned to the palace. As he approached the palace gates, he heard someone shouting in the distance.
I demand you release him at once.
Get out of my way!
Upon noticing the prince's arrival, Anne immediately bowed her head, fearing he might recognize her as the maidservant from earlier that day. In order to gain access to the palace, Anne had procured an elegant outfit and disguised herself as a noblewoman. To Anne's surprise, even after accepting the payment, the person in charge of the slaves refused to release them. Fortunately, the prince failed to recognize her.
A servant is not a thief, Your Highness, and those who are cannot help themselves.
Enlighten us.
If you suffer your people to be ill-educated...
Just as everyone expected her to face severe consequences, the prince ordered the release of the slaves. Seeing that her goal had been accomplished, Anne instructed the servant to leave quickly and then hurriedly fled the scene herself. However, the prince caught up with her after just a few steps. Realizing that she was now posing as a noblewoman, she claimed to be the daughter of a duke from a neighboring country visiting her cousin. Under his persistent questioning,
Is Comtesse Nicole de Lancret.
Then, in the brief moment she turned to bid farewell to her mother, Anne vanished from the prince's sight. That evening, the prince asked his mother about Duke Nick Lancred, but he was destined to find no answers. Unbeknownst to him, Nick Lancred was the name of Anne's birth mother. Although the title was fabricated, Anne's mother was indeed a noblewoman. The story behind this deception began after the death of Anne's birth mother. Her father, the Duke, had married his current wife, the Duchess. From a young age, the Duchess had always harbored a deep resentment towards Anne, believing that she had stolen the Duke's love from her. However, it wasn't until the Duke perished in an accident during one of his trips that the Duchess began to actively target Anne. Over the years, Anne had been marginalized to the point where she was no different from a maidservant. Having failed to gather any useful information, the prince decided to host a royal ball open to all nobles, hoping to lure Anne out of hiding.